American media is now exposing what appears to be growing anxiety inside Trump's camp after the Iran talks collapsed in just 21 hours. There appears to be little appetite for further conflict after the breakdown in diplomacy, and a full-scale war may still be seen as deeply costly and dangerous. Is Trump now wary of a larger war with Iran, as fresh reports lay bare the pressure, uncertainty, and strategic calculations shaping Washington's next move? Trump's naval blockade threat is also being viewed by some analysts as a possible smokescreen after the failure of the talks. Experts are now closely examining Trump's latest maritime blockade threat after the collapse of the Iran talks, as attention shifts from failed diplomacy to the risks of a much broader confrontation at sea. The Washington Post has analyzed what unfolded in Islamabad and how Trump's latest move fits into a larger escalation strategy, framing the blockade threat as a response to diplomatic deadlock rather than a sudden impulse. According to the Washington Post, the president is now betting that economic pressure can achieve what military force could not, by squeezing Iran through trade and shipping instead of relying only on bombs. The paper also suggested that Trump appears to be following a strategy associated with President Dwight D. Eisenhower, one centered on expanding the pressure around a conflict when a direct solution remains elusive. "If you cannot solve a problem, enlarge it," wrote Washington Post columnist David Ignatius, using that line to describe what he sees as Trump's emerging approach after the Islamabad breakdown. David Ignatius wrote, and I quote, "After talking Sunday with people close to the negotiations, my sense is that the Islamabad impasse won't necessarily mean a return to war. The blockade is a pressure tactic, to be sure, but not primarily a military one. Trump has no appetite for further armed conflict. He knows that the upsides are limited and the tail risk, as financial traders like to say, is large. His aim instead is to put a severely battered Iran into an economic vice to see if its leaders will set a different course in a big comprehensive deal." The American side expects that despite last weekend's standoff in Islamabad, contacts will probably continue, through Pakistani intermediaries. Trump's destination is still the exit ramp. That tap-out metaphor is the rationale for the blockade. A shorthand for this strategy might be Operation Economic Epic Fury. Trump is said to have recognized that a ground attack or other military escalation might lead the U.S. into a quagmire. It has dawned on the White House, as critics have been warning, that wars in the Middle East are easy to start but hard to stop. Unquote. Following the failed dialogue in Islamabad, Trump announced on April 12 that the United States would impose a naval blockade, dramatically escalating the standoff after talks ended without a deal. The United States is now set to blockade the Strait of Hormuz, a waterway already disrupted by Iran's actions, making one of the world's most critical shipping lanes even more unstable. At the same time, the IRGC has threatened a severe response to any U.S. warship approaching Iranian waters, raising the danger that the blockade could quickly trigger a direct clash. U.S. President Donald Trump could now resume limited military strikes on Iran after the latest round of talks failed, raising the prospect of a new phase of confrontation even as diplomacy lies in ruins. Trump and his advisors are reportedly studying plans for limited strikes, while also weighing the option of blocking the Strait of Hormuz, combining pinprick attacks with economic strangulation to squeeze Tehran further. These developments were reported by the Wall Street Journal on April 12, citing multiple U.S. officials who described internal debates over how far Trump is really willing to go against Iran. Trump could in theory return to full-fledged bombing campaigns against Iran, but officials quoted in the report said that scenario was less likely, reflecting fears of a spiraling conflict the U.S. cannot easily control. Officials told the Wall Street Journal that a full war could further destabilize an already fragile region, and that the president remains deeply averse to long, open-ended conflicts that could trap U.S. forces for years. According to the Wall Street Journal report, Trump could also seek a temporary maritime blockade on Iran, all while ramping up pressure on U.S. allies to shoulder more of the burden in any escalation. The president could push allies to take responsibility for a prolonged naval escort mission, forcing them to commit ships and manpower to protect tankers while Washington tries to keep its own costs down. However, officials also said Trump remains open to a diplomatic solution, using the threat of force as leverage while still leaving space for a last-minute deal that he can sell as a personal victory. The White House declined to publicly discuss Trump's specific military and diplomatic options, adding to the sense of secrecy and uncertainty over what Washington might do next. U.S. officials warned that any option Trump chooses next will carry major risks, whether it is limited strikes, a wider war, or a naval blockade that could ignite new clashes at sea. The Wall Street Journal reported that relaunching a full-scale war would further drain critical American munitions, stretching already pressured stockpiles and exposing weaknesses in America's ability to sustain prolonged combat. A prolonged conflict would also expose Trump to stronger backlash from voters who are deeply skeptical of endless Middle East wars, threatening both his political standing and his image as a dealmaker. A successful naval blockade could choke Iran's vital oil revenue and tighten the economic noose, but so far Tehran has refused to buckle under intense sanctions and pressure from Washington.
I would say it's holding well. Their military is destroyed. Their whole Navy is underwater. You know that 158 ships are gone. Their Navy's gone. Most of their mine droppers are gone. We have a lot of people, as you know, at 10 o'clock tomorrow, we have a blockade going into effect. That'll be 10 o'clock tomorrow. Other nations are working so that Iran will not be able to sell oil. And that would be very effective. But what we want to do is we want to, and again, we don't need it. What we notice and what we see and what I think is maybe my idea, maybe not, I don't know. But there are many boats heading toward our country to fill up with oil and then go and take it. So they're not going to go through the Hormuz Strait. And ultimately that'll be corrected. But in the meantime, they're using us. We have more oil because of drill, baby, drill. We have more oil than Russia and Saudi Arabia put together. I think Iran is in very bad shape. I think they're very desperate. We had a meeting that lasted 21 hours. We understand the situation better than anybody, and Iran's in very bad shape. And just so you understand, Iran will not have a nuclear weapon. We'll not have. There is no way that they're going to get. They still want it, and they made that clear the other night. Iran will not have a nuclear weapon. Oh, I don't know. I don't care if they come back or not. If they don't come back, I'm fine. Their military is gone. Their missiles are largely depleted. The manufacturing capability for missiles and drones is largely defeated. We've been very nice. We haven't ripped down too many bridges. We did one only because they broke their word. They broke their promise. And remember, their promise was that they were going to open the Hormuz Strait. They didn't do it. They lied. We don't like a pope that's going to say that it's okay to have a nuclear weapon. We don't want a pope that says crime is okay in our cities. I don't like it. I'm not a big fan of Pope Leo. He's a very liberal person, and he's a man that doesn't believe in stopping crime. He's a man that doesn't think that we should be toying with a country that wants a nuclear weapon so they can blow up the world. I'm not a fan of Pope Leo.